Hello, everybody, and a very warm welcome to today's webinar, brought to you by Shared Services Link and sponsored by PRGX. Today, we are going to be looking at strategies for minimizing supplier inquiries, disputes, and unnecessary repayments. My name is Sarah Fain, and I am the head of content here at Shared Services Link, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Patrick Kelly, the Chief Data Intelligence Officer at PRGX. You, of course, have a very important role to play in today's webinar as well, and that is just to make sure that you get the most out of this hour. We may not be able to see you, but we can feel your virtual presence. This is a live event, so we love to hear from you. You can send us your questions. The best way to do that is usually over on the right-hand side of your screen. You'll see a little question box. If you send those will come into my inbox, and we'll be answering those in about the last 10 minutes of the webinar. Just to preempt some of those commonly asked questions, the recording will be available on our website, and we will send everybody who's registered a copy of the slides as well. And we just love to hear from you. If you've learned anything today, reach out to us, share the love on LinkedIn. Again, it's great to feel your virtual presence here. So just wanted to open up with a little bit of context and what we're going to be discussing today. We hear from a lot of finance shared services organizations that are just drowning in supplier inquiries and disputes. The inbox is overflowing, but it really doesn't have to be this way. We see that leading organizations are finding ways to both improve their systems of communication and automate so that their team, their human team, can really put their experience where it counts. So today, we'll be looking at some of the trends in invoice and inquiry dispute volumes that we see. We're going to be looking at the top pain points in managing AP inquiries and disputes. We won't keep you waiting too long. We will get quite quickly to the 5 winning strategies to reduce response times, improve dispute resolution, and enhance accuracy, transparency, and supplier collaboration. We've got a great case study about a company who saved millions and did some really dramatic reducing dispute times, and there's some great stats we're looking forward to sharing with you. And then we're also got some information to share with you on Supplier Connect. And of course, we are here for your questions. And I just want to share some of the stats that we pulled just to get a sense of what we hear from our audience. We had a 2023 survey where we asked about the day-to-day challenges of finance, shared services professionals. And we found 48% of our respondents said that they were just struggling to cope with the volume of work, and 42% said they were bogged down in manual work. So if you're feeling this way, you really aren't alone. And one factor that really does take a lot of this work is handling, routine supplier communications. If you haven't done the maths on this, assuming each communication takes approximately 8 minutes. Looking at the number of supplier communications you get per week, you can really see how this adds up in terms of the minutes per week, hours per year, and some companies really needing 5 full-time FTEs just to manage routine supplier communications. So that's a lot for me, but I want to just reach out to the people on the line today. So we want to hear from you. We want to understand how effective is your current process for managing supplier inquiries and disputes. Would you say that it's very effective and efficient? Would you say that it's effective, but there is some room for improvement? Would you say actually maybe it's getting to ineffective, it's causing some significant challenges for you? Or would you say it's very ineffective and that there is some disruption and it's drain on your growth? Again, we'd love to hear from you. So if you want to take the option that best matches your situation, we'll be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1, and the results are coming up on your screen. And everybody came in the middle here. So nobody at the either end of the bell curve, but 81% of you said that there's some room for improvement, and 19% of you said there are some significant challenges. So interesting to see that. And now I'd like to bring in you, Patrick, to give a bit more background about you and the situation that we're looking at today.
Wonderful. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Appreciate you having me on today. My name is Patrick Kelly, and I lead the technology solutions for PRGX. PRGX is a global leader in source-to-pay data intelligence and profit recovery services, as well as applications. And PRGX operates across 30 countries. We've been in business and a leader for a number of decades now, and we analyze over $2 trillion worth of spend a year. Today, I'm going to be talking about the workflow around this invoice inquiry dispute management. And as I know many of you on the call already know, but just to provide kind of an oversimplified context of the source to pay life cycle, of course, you've got suppliers, you have agreements, purchase orders, and then invoices and payments. And what we're really going to focus on is the tail end of that process and the workflow specifically around these invoice inquiries and dispute volumes. And as we talk with our clients and other businesses in the industry, one of the things that we are really consistently hearing is that there's this real increase in invoice inquiries and disputes. And it's becoming a pain point and a challenge. And one of the reasons for that is suppliers are increasing their investments in technology and automation. We're seeing a pretty drastic spike in bots and bot behavior. And bots are really just a form of automation. It enables suppliers to be able to pull information down from a whole variety of platforms or portals or information, and then to be able to assess that and oftentimes respond with inquiries. They can be simple, or they could require a bit more research and work to be able to address. And as a result, the businesses that we talk to are struggling. They have a growing backlog. And oftentimes when there are disputes in terms of payment disputes, they're repaying those disputes oftentimes erroneously. And so today we're going to talk about some of the pain points and then the 5 winning strategies that we see in the market in order to meaningfully improve this process and get it to be out of conflict into a meaningful part of collaboration between businesses and their suppliers. So first, talking about some of these key pain points and starting with staffing costs. It's very common when we talk to businesses, they have fully dedicated staff to this workflow. And if not, it's a considerable amount of effort and time commitment for the folks that are on the teams that support it. And this is of course, a significant financial investment in these resources, and it also can be a drain, particularly when the sorts of inquiries are non-strategic, right, or more tactical. And it's not just the amount of resource necessary, but also that these teams have this growing backlog, kind of the constant and continuous flow of inquiries that come in. And so even businesses that have these dedicated teams oftentimes feel like they're underwater, if not treading water, to be able to manage, and that is a real cost to the business. Now, the second pain point is around communication and governance, and specifically here is these workflows are all about communication back between businesses and their suppliers. And if you have an inability to provide easy access to key documents and information, as well as to organize that information and ensure that the communication is included, this can easily get out of hand. Often we talk to businesses that are using emails or phone calls or maybe repurposed ticketing services in order to manage this workflow, and the data doesn't necessarily trail the communication. So simple questions about invoices or payments become real work for people to be able to manage. Not to mention that without governance, you have very repetitive cycles, right? So if a supplier has a question or if they have a dispute, oftentimes they need to provide some information themselves, right? And without the right governance in place, you're going to have this constant, well, we need this artifact, we need this document. And that is a real pain point. And again, it's unnecessary, it's inefficient communication. Now, the third point, which I mentioned previously, is around the volume. We are seeing this increase in volume with thousands of inbound vendor inquiries. It can be very overwhelming to triage, to process, and respond. That, of course, contributes to the staffing costs and the resource costs. And it's either further exacerbated when there isn't good communication or governance in place. The fourth point around this is erroneous payments. And specifically what I mean by that is, when there are invoices posted and if there are deductions or credits applied and suppliers either have questions about those or they dispute those, oftentimes businesses don't have the right systems in place to be able to reconcile those payments. And one of the things that we most commonly see that contributes to these erroneous repayments is because of the volume of inquiries and disputes, they have policies that they must put in place in terms of disputes of a certain size automatically get repaid. And then when you go back to the point previously around automation and bots, suppliers can quickly learn what those thresholds are, right? And they know that if they submit disputes below a certain amount, that they're going to automatically get repaid. One really good example of this is there are some of these specific technology firms that help deal with deductions in order to produce disputes. And you can go on their websites, and frankly, there's even some tutorials where they will talk about specific deduction types and automatically disputing them regardless of the evidence, right? Now, that's not great behavior, and honestly, it gets propagated by the fact that there's a lack of governance in place, right? There's no burden on suppliers in this case in order to be able to dispute deductions. And again, this is less about promoting the conflict, but it's more about increasing the efficiency and effectiveness of these solutions so that businesses like yourselves can really reduce these erroneous repayments, so that you can actually focus more of your time on reconciling, getting to the right payment, and doing so quickly, and focusing less time on the tactical questions of when is the payment going to get posted, or what are the details of a payment or an invoice. And then lastly, and very importantly, is a pain point around supplier abrasion. All of these pain points really contribute to the fact that this is not a enjoyable process when there's conflict in the system, either for your users managing these workflows or for your suppliers. And the reality of it is supplier relationships are extremely strategic to a business health. And so when this is an unhealthy process, we do see a strain on those relationships, challenging communications, and they can damage your business relationships. Oftentimes, when this is the case, we even see it reaching beyond just the shared services team, because unreconciled payments then go back to purchasers or merchandisers in retail, where their core job is to be making business decisions in their area or their function, but they kind of get dragged into these processes due to the lack of governance, due to the lack of communication and effectiveness of these workflows. So these are real pain points across this workflow. And today, again, we're excited that we're going to be talking about the strategies to address these. But before I do, I also want to provide a glimmer of hope, right? This webinar is not just all about the kind of challenges and the doom and gloom, of course, of the pain in this process, but there is true opportunity here. And these are stats directly from our clients where we have a solution in place, and we've seen a reduction from 25 to 40% in erroneous payments, a decrease in the number of inquiries, much less the efficiency of answering those inquiries, by up to half of inquiries that are coming into the system that are requiring responses from your teams, and a return on investment and investing in these strategies of 10 to 30%. I know that's a wide range, and a lot of that has to do with there's frankly a wide range of workflows and capabilities. As I mentioned before, it's not uncommon for businesses to manage this process through emails. And we all know from our email inboxes outside of this process that can be quickly overwhelming, and it can really get out of control when it's not structured, when it doesn't have the data trail and the artifacts that follow the communication that are necessary in order to answer questions or reconcile any disputes. So let's get into the exciting content around the 5 winning strategies here. I'm going to go through each of these and provide a little bit of context as well as some examples here. And I'm going to start with built-in governance, right? Based on the pain points that I just articulated, it's probably no surprise that built-in governance is a really, really important strategy to be able to have a winning process and a winning workflow around this. And really, these first 2 strategies, I wouldn't even consider them nice to have, but rather need to have or table stakes. What do we mean by built-in governance? Well, first is a central portal with these comprehensive workflows and streamlined rules, so that it isn't kind of the Wild West. We've even talked to clients before where it is managed through an email inbox, and if there's movement on the team or people move out of the team or there's attrition, you can lose track of these inquiries that are coming in, or oftentimes they're not just easy one-off answers, but there's a little bit of back and forth. And without governance to be able to manage those workflows, the inefficiency can spike and oftentimes get, frankly, out of hand. The second part of this is these business requirements. I mentioned before about how either bots or even human users will dispute deductions or certain payments, right? And if there's not a structured requirement in place, right, if you don't require the evidence or even a description of that dispute, the automatic answer is going to be asking for those artifacts and increasing the cycle times as what to reconcile or to answer inquiries, and building in the governance, requiring a burden of proof when a supplier has a dispute or they have a question on a specific invoice or payment. Again, it's just table stakes. It's necessary to make this a healthy workflow both for your users and suppliers. And then lastly is around a more sophisticated workflow engine, because the reality of it is certain questions should go to different people within the team and different parts of the organization. And so having this built-in governance, not just for the flow of information, as well as these business requirements, are extremely important. And like I said before, this is table stakes to ensuring that there's a healthy process to be able to manage and a healthy solution to be able to manage this workflow. The second strategy is around vendor self-serve. And I do believe that this really does go hand in hand with the built-in governance. What do we mean by self-service here is full visibility into the paid and unpaid invoices, the statuses, as well as any of the details around deductions or payments. And this is a bit different than what you maybe would see in a invoice submission platform or in an EDI platform, because oftentimes there's disparate systems across these workflows internally, right? There's invoices, but there's also the payment details that correspond with those, or the status of a payment related to an invoice. All this information exists within the organization, and having a self-service portal to meaningfully reduce the number of inquiries is extremely important. And this should be a single pane of glass between your users as well as those suppliers. This is oftentimes one of the biggest reductions or strategies that you can put in place to reduce those unnecessary inquiries. We were just talking to a business actually last week about some of their challenges, and to use their own language, their top priority is to get their team to stop answering "quote unquote" stupid questions, right? And of course, what that what they meant by that is they don't want to have to use the people on their team to answer the simple questions. A good portion of their questions do come down to, hey, when is this scheduled to be paid? That's easily accessible information within your systems, and so providing this self-service, so simple questions like that can be self-serve and not become inquiries and not get added to the backlog are extremely important, and that contributes to this concept of single source of truth as well, ensuring that again all of that data across the workflow at the end of the cycle of source to pay is easy accessible, and everyone's working from the same information. Right, those invoices and those payment details are kind of facts that everyone has at hand. And then when there are inquiries or when there are disputes, you're working from that single source of truth. You're working from the same artifacts, and the communications that you have with your suppliers are based on those facts. And actually, those facts can follow the trail of communication. So now let's get into some of the things that go maybe a step beyond the table stakes. Now, AI and machine learning, of course, are big topics of conversation in any industry, and not only are they kind of new and exciting topics, but they've frankly been around for quite some time. And workflows like this are great examples of where AI and machine learning can play a really meaningful impact in driving both the efficiency and the effectiveness of a process. So some examples of that is being able to enable AI and large language models to answer some of those simple questions. The reality of it is your suppliers supply many businesses, right, and not just yours. And so even if you do have some portal in place, or frankly, if it is just emails, right, this is one of many relationships that they need to manage on their end. And so even if there is an ability for them to go track down the details of a payment date, it might be easier for them, frankly, to fire off a question and say, hey, when is this going to get paid? Well, why not anticipate that and enable that question to be answered or asked just as easily, but have it be able to be answered by AI, because AI works really, really well out of the box with structured data, and you can, with large language models, you can take the ways that normal humans communicate and ask a question like, when is invoice 123 going to get paid, and be able to answer that question really easily and efficiently. one of the other great things about the technology around AI and ML is it can learn, and it can learn from your own behavior and the behavior of your suppliers. And so those answers and the sophistication at which that communication can happen only improves over time. But it's not actually just about those the communication between your suppliers and the intelligence of your platform. There's also really meaningful opportunities for artificial intelligence and for machine learning and data science to support your own workflows internally. From a communication standpoint, one of those strategies is to enable assisted responses, right? So if it does go beyond the complexity of when is this invoice going to get paid, and it's actually asking about the details of a payment, or maybe the details of a deduction, or they're asking why they need to provide an artifact. Again, these can be common questions, but maybe not automatically answered. And in this case, you can have assisted responses. Those assisted responses can, again, learn from a large volume of responses that your team provides to suppliers and draft responses for you. And there's levels of confidence that those responses can provide. So you can enable those to auto answer, or again, just meaningfully improve the efficiency with a pre-drafted answer that you can review, tweak, and then send off to your suppliers. Beyond just communication, there's this opportunity for augmented intelligence and decision science as well. So a good example of that is when a dispute does come through, right? Again, there's a large volume of disputes for the machine learning algorithms to learn off of, and they can actually predict the probability that the dispute is valid, and that something does require repayment. And that level of augmentation not only helps with triage, so that you can get to the most pressing inquiries first, but you can also kind of shortcut the research that's necessary to reconcile that, right? We've seen examples where businesses have suppliers that dispute everything, right? And have a lot of denied repays, right? And so the decision science can actually flag that and say, hey, this is a low probability, and here's why. The history of this supplier is that the repay rates are really, really low, not to mention the fact that this dispute does not include a certain artifact that's required, and so on and so forth. This meaningfully increases the efficiency of the team, and of course also increases the satisfaction of the team, because then folks that are on your shared services team can really focus on the non-tactical, the things that do require human intervention and a bit of research, and it can always be assisted by that throughout the process. So while I wouldn't necessarily classify this as table stakes, I think it's quickly approaching. As I mentioned before, capabilities around AI and machine learning are really, really well suited for these focused workflows, especially when they're backed by real data. That's what today's versions of AI and machine learning kind of deal with best. And so you might as well kind of supercharge the intelligence of your team and ensure, again, that they're assisted by the intelligence of the platform. Now, as we move on to the fourth strategy here, this is really about monitoring and reporting. So this is less about the kind of tactical day-to-day, every single inquiry, and how do we increase efficiency, but zooming out and actually looking at the health of the entire system. This is incredibly important, not just to kind of monitor and keep a finger on the pulse of the activity and the performance throughout, but also to identify the health or the challenges in a system. Everything from inquiry volume to supplier activity. You can look at the kind of the throughput, both from a supplier standpoint as well as from your own team, and really leverage these insights to improve the process. Again, I think this has a lot to do with the tie-in to having a governance built in place and a self-service platform. You can't easily do this when you're just leveraging email or maybe other service tickets, because the most critical return on investment with a monitoring and reporting in a system is actually being able to identify root cause. So examples that we've seen where this plays a really significant role is upstream challenges, right? So there may be deduction types that are coming from an organization that are getting disputed really consistently, and in the day-to-day work, it might be hard to identify that, right? That there's the potential for this kind of systemic error upstream. But when you have more monitoring and reporting in place, you can say, hey, wow, there's been a really high increase in the number of disputes around a certain deduction. and a high increase in maybe these certain deduction types, right? Or there's been a really high increase in this type of inquiry, this type of question that we're getting. It's these sorts of reporting and kind of macro view on this entire process that enables teams to then think about the strategies and the upstream root causes that are necessary in order to systemically fix issues that are in the system. We had a client a couple months ago that actually was seeing a lot of pricing deductions coming through, right? And again, in the day-to-day, that may look like regular activity, but when they took a zoom out and they said, hey, this is actually a really big spike, they were actually able to go upstream and identify that there was an issue with some of the pricing agreements with a certain set of suppliers within one of the categories of their business, right? And so fixing these things upstream drastically reduce unnecessary conflict with your suppliers. Now, getting to that point of conflict with suppliers, sometimes in these processes, it can feel like a conflicting relationship, right? Us versus them, the triage of inquiries that are coming in, and a lot of the disputes, and we're kind of battling our suppliers and trying to get to the right answers or reconcile repayments. But the reality of it is that suppliers, like I mentioned before, are strategic relationships, and the best experience for your teams are the best experiences for your suppliers as well. Businesses and their suppliers ultimately throughout this entire workflow have the same objective, and that is timely and correct payments, right? And so by keeping this kind of in mind and providing a great experience for your suppliers through this workflow, it actually solves problems and reaches outcomes that are both in the best interest of your business as well as your suppliers. So being able to really contain these inquiries and disputes, provide a good experience, right? Your AI enablement within this platform is going to be able to automatically respond, not require someone going to the back of a queue that can be, days, weeks, or even months to answer simple questions. And so keeping your suppliers happy is extremely important, and I think is a reflection of the full experience and the full, platform and technology that's in place across this workflow. So after kind of going through all of these strategies here, now let's kind of take a step to zoom out again. These first two strategies, built-in governance and self-service, are the kind of fundamentals, the foundation, the table stakes of what's required here. And with that platform in place, it gives you the opportunity to take the advantage of the technologies that are available in the market to apply to those platforms. Things like AI and machine learning to further enhance the intelligence, further enhance the efficiencies of the workflows, to be able to put insights and reporting on top, to be able to give those macro views, to kind of see the forest through the trees so that you can identify systemic errors and get to root cause analysis of things that are bogging down both users of your team as well as the suppliers that you work with. And ultimately, happy suppliers are a good thing. Really transitioning this entire workflow from conflict into a collaborative exercise and meaningfully improving the flow through, but ultimately that end objective, timely and correct payments for your suppliers so that they can remain happy and strategic relationships that are the foundation and the kind of underpinning of your business. Now, as Sarah promised, we also wanted to share a case study that really kind of brings all of this together. So there was a client that we worked with that was really struggling with this process and this workflow. It was a top 25 retailer. They had really complex systems and limited visibility. And retail in particular has a really high volume of deductions, largely due to the complexity of the way that their business works. There's lots of different funding mechanisms that are beyond just the agreement and kind of the cost of goods. You can think about promotions and shelf tags and displays and allowances and discounts and all of that. When you bring it together, oftentimes leads to challenges at the end of this life cycle, both in terms of inquiries as well as some of the deductions and dispute management. So this client was seeing tens of thousands of inquiries annually, and about half to 60% of those were simple inquiries, not even just disputes on payment deductions. And the volume of kind of the money at play here was in the millions, right? So there was millions of deductions and millions of disputed deductions through this workflow. And so you can imagine that, one, this is a very consequential workflow for the business, and a really heavy investment in getting it right. And so we worked with this client to put a system in place, leveraging the 5 strategies that we walked through with, in this presentation, implementing a built-in governance, a platform that enabled self-service, intelligence to drive the efficiency and reporting and the like, in order to do that. So with this implementation, there were over 5,000 suppliers in the platform and over 10,000 total users. And almost instantly, we saw a meaningful improvement in that system, right? We had the single source of truth. We implemented those workflows and the custom kind of triage, as well as the business-specific requirements to dispute any of those deductions. This prevented millions of dollars in unnecessary repayments, and it also enabled the reporting that identified some of those systemic issues. I actually gave an example from this client earlier, where they saw a pricing discrepancy that had nothing to do with this workflow, but actually was further upstream. Yet the burden of that discrepancy in the system fell to this team as well as their suppliers, and really kind of created a lot of the conflict and required this team to then reach out to the merchandisers within the retailers to help reconcile that, right? So it wasn't just the 8 minutes, of response time that you typically may see within an inquiry, but actually it could be days, weeks, or months for the kind of back and forth between the shared service, the supplier, and then pulling in some of the actual business stakeholders to weigh in to help reconcile these repayments. Really, really, really painful for the team. But putting these strategies in place, it actually reduced the payback rate by 75%. That was eradicating those unnecessary erroneous repayments. It enabled them to take that policy that was previously in place and say we're automatically going to repay disputes below a certain threshold, and it drastically reduced the invoice inquiry as well as the dispute times by 80%. And when we talk about ROI, and particularly on that last point, that reduction of payments was millions of dollars in savings. Also, the FTE reduction of operational costs was meaningful. And this wasn't necessarily about, of course, like reducing heads, but it was about reallocating resource on this team to be able to focus on much more strategic and impactful work and really get them out of the tactical and the day-to-day of answering simple inquiries. Not only did it help manage the resource that was required for today, but it also enabled this team to scale. Because, of course, as we're seeing more inquiries and disputes, you need to have a solution in place that scales, not just with adding headcount and people. And so with these strategies in place and a technology in place, it actually enables scale, so that you can much more easily deal with increases of any activity, or really the ebbs and flows, handle some of the systemic errors, see those, and then address them through the monitoring and reporting that's necessary. And that root cause analysis has been a real big game changer. I mean, we still meet with them on a regular basis to review those reports, to call out any anomalies or spikes in behavior that doesn't look like the norm. And those become strategic conversations that go upstream to then identify exactly what those might be, and address them at the source. Again, taking the burden both off of the shared services team as well as the supplier users, because ultimately, again, those are back and forth that don't really benefit anyone. Now,
Great. Well,
yeah, go ahead. Sorry, back over to you.
Yeah, thank you. So I just want to say just so much to take in there. So really impressive case study there, Patrick. Thank you so much. We just want to check in with our audience again as well. I know we've shared a lot about the different challenges that we face and the different ways forward, but we want to just check in with what challenges are you facing due to supplier inquiries and disputes? Are you struggling with, you can take as many as you that apply here, unwarranted repayments, supplier abrasion, like we've discussed, the internal cost to manage disputes and resolutions, or the lack of root cause visibility. So yeah, if you could just tick the option that best matches your situation, I will be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. Thank you, and those should be coming up on your screen now. So it looks like a tie for number one here. At 57% of you say the internal cost to manage disputes and resolutions, as well as the lack of root cause visibility. 29% cite supplier abrasion, and 14% say they struggle with unwarranted repayments. It's really interesting, and I personally found the kind of the bot communication fascinating. And if you want to put any more color in like the chat, the questions box, please feel free as well. So thanks, and interesting to see that. So I will bring back the slides now, Patrick. And what do you make of that? And how does that tie in with what you see in the market?
Yeah, I think that those responses are pretty consistent with what we're hearing from other teams. Of course, supplier abrasion is really a downstream impact of a lot of the other challenges that the teams are seeing, and putting these strategies in place is about like getting this entire process right. And so when we do, the conversation often does start with managing the workload, and then it quickly leads to identifying those systemic issues, right? And so I think those responses definitely correspond with what we hear in the market. And part of the reason that I'm of course here talking to you today is not just my personal passion for this area and this workflow and this necessary process for businesses, but also because PRGX has a solution, right? We reference this in terms of the opportunity, in terms of improvement, as well as the strategies that we've helped put in place for our clients. We actually relaunched Supplier Connect, which is our platform that facilitates this entire process, just April of this year. And it is about transforming this process from conflict to collaboration. And it ensures that having a purpose-built solution, getting teams out of email and phone calls or repurpose service tickets, it's our fundamental belief, and certainly the belief of our clients, that that's necessary in order for businesses to be able to manage this workflow. And as I mentioned before, with a lot of the progression of technology writ large, including AI and ML, it's really well positioned to help manage these workflows. And by putting in a platform like Supplier Connect, it actually is what enables you to get the most out of technology. I can't really imagine what it would look like to implement AI machine learning on an email system, right? Or how challenging it would be to be able to get to the systemic kind of reporting and insights and activity and performance of this workflow without a dedicated technology solution. And so we're really excited about Supplier Connect, and mostly because we relaunched this platform due to the challenges that we were hearing in the market. We've got extensive experience actually as kind of users of this workflow ourselves. Right, a big part of our business is about profit recovery and helping manage the claims and getting right the payment details for our clients. So we know firsthand how painful it can be if you don't have the right technologies and workflows in place. And more often than not, when we do talk to businesses about this, we get people kind of to lean forward and sit on the edge of their seats, because I think it's long overdue that there is a purpose-built solution and technology that can help this workflow. It's very, very ripe for implementing some of these key strategies to improve everyone's lives, both, again, your businesses as well as your suppliers. And on that point, we talked about keeping suppliers happy and how that really is mutually beneficial. We don't just talk to our clients about their satisfaction with the platform, although it's very important for us to measure that ROI, but we also talk to the supplier users as well, and we hear overwhelmingly that when you do employ these strategies, you are able to achieve those outcomes, both for your business as well as your suppliers. Below are a couple of the quotes that we've pulled directly from suppliers as we've talked to them after putting the solution in place. And some of the things that really stand out to me is this is really user friendly. It's I love the ability to be able to access information on a timely basis. Yeah, again, like when you think about other critical workflows in a business, a lot of this stuff just kind of we take for granted. But when you don't have the right technology for a workflow like this, you simply can't get these benefits, right? Nobody wants to go back and forth over an email when the data exists. There's no reason why we shouldn't be offering or operating off of a single source of truth and having like kind of the more intelligent conversations and not back and forth around simple kind of payment details or dates or whatever it might be. All right, so of course, just kind of wrap things here. We wanted to put the 5 strategies back in front of you. Whether you work with PRGX, you have your own solutions, or you work with other technology providers, I would really just maybe even challenge you to think through each of these strategies. For your solutions that you have in place, for the teams that work, day in, day out on this process, is there this necessary built-in governance in place? Do you have, the self-service? Do you offer that to your suppliers? And it's, again, not just for their benefit, but for yours. And also, the wave of AI is inescapable at this point. I've said it a couple times already, but these sorts of workflows are, I think these are the low-hanging fruit for the improvement in, the day-to-day management of a process like this, leveraging AI, machine learning. And then, the monitoring and reporting, perhaps that actually, makes its way into the table stakes as well, because the best way to, have a really, really overwhelming backlog is to not have visibility into the systemic issues that actually trickle down into these teams and become the unnecessary work for the shared services team and the burden on the shared services team. When the reality of it is there's a root cause that should be identifiable further upstream. And so, with that, before we get into Q&A, Sarah's going to put a poll up here asking about any interest in a demo of the Supplier Connect platform. Of course, we would love to work with any of you in helping address this problem, but also with the relaunch of this platform for us in April, frankly, we're also interested in mutual learning. If there's ways that we can share more about the specifics of our platform that you could learn from, and we'd love to learn from you as well. What strategies are you putting in place? What's resonating and what's not. So please feel free to fill out this poll here and let us know if you're interested in learning more about Supplier Connect.
Thank you. Yes. So, yeah, thanks for taking your time to just tick the option. Again, it's not mandatory, but it just helps, tailor the follow-up after the webinar. If you're interested in seeing a demo, just tick this and they can just get put to the top of the list. So I'll be closing this now, but at any point, feel free to send us a comment or question. So I am just about to go look through the questions to pull up them. But as I do that, Patrick, could you just tell us where we could find you in person, maybe this September in Vegas?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. Please do submit some questions on Q&A. I think that's a lot of the value of webinars like this. But as you are submitting your questions, PRGX is hosting a conference in Vegas in September. This is an opportunity for us to get in person. And honestly, one of the biggest values that businesses see out of this conference is actually meeting with other professionals in this space and really sharing ideas, talking about kind of the challenges, the solutions, and things across finance and procurement and even merchandising that you're experiencing. And who doesn't love to go to Vegas in September? And so if you have any interest in joining us in Vegas, please do let us know. We'd be more than thrilled to have you join our conference in September.
That's great. All right, I'm going to open up the first question, but I'll just keep this in the background if you want to take this again, just to tailor the follow-up. So first question for you, Patrick, is coming as listeners asking what the uptake on self-service portals is like. They've heard that maybe only 20 or 30% with a lot of effort from the organization, like password setup, maintenance, connections to ERP, IT, engagements, etc. So could you expand on a little bit about what your experience with setup is and kind of the work that goes into it as well?
Yep, yeah, certainly. So the system does connect directly to our client's ERP. We're entirely system agnostic, whatever ERPs that you work with. Again, part of the nature of being the business that we are and total source to pay data intelligence, we're in the business of making it easy to connect to your data to drive value. And so the other point of this is the platform is single sign-on for any of the business's users, and then we enable businesses to be able to manage their supplier users as well. And as we shared some of the kind of direct quotes from suppliers, they're very happy to adopt a platform like this. It makes their lives meaningfully easier. And so, we do offer customization in that implementation to ensure that there's the right workflows and the right, kind of system, obviously the system connections in place. But we've got lots of practice implementing systems like this. So the other piece of that too is oftentimes when we do implement that system, there's obviously the change management for businesses that are users of that, but also it enables any of the communications out to the suppliers to be able to reference that portal for any questions, right? And so in implementations that we've done recently, it replaces the hey, send all questions to support@email.com or ap@email.com or whatever it might be, and it says it replaces that with go to this portal specifically, and that way not only do they have access to all that information, but then it entirely controls all of the communication between you and suppliers. So we see it as a replacement of all those kind of one-off and ad hoc emails in terms of the ways that suppliers communicate around this entire process.
Thank you. And if you have any follow-up questions, feel free. We still have about between 10 and 15 minutes left. Second question that's come in for you, Patrick, is are your supplier workflows operating at the level of the invoice, or can they work on an issue level? So for example, incorrect pricing for supplier across many products.
Yeah, it can be at the line level as well. So we get the invoice detail, payment details, vendor master, as well as the item details and any of the invoice deduction and details as well. We get all of that. And so it works down both either at that invoice level as well as those line items. And one of the things about the platform is that it ensures that, again, that those artifacts and that data follows you, right? So actually, when there are inquiries or if there are disputes on a specific invoice, you can almost think of that artifact as being the kind of the source of that communication. So when they submit that communication, it's not entirely detached from that data, but rather, as that communication comes through, you would be able to see it, see all of those artifacts attached to that communication directly, and it all happens within the portal. I believe there are some solutions out there where it actually just kind of takes that and then routes emails. That's not the case for our Supplier Connect platform. It actually houses the messaging in and of themselves, and it creates actually a task-based communication workflow. So you as a user would be able to come in and say, hey, you've got 10 tasks, right? And here are the tasks. One of those is that there's a communication from a supplier, and as you click on that, all of the information that is associated with that question is in screen and in line with that question, including any of the documentation that they are either required or opted to submit with that. So you'll be able to see the invoice, the line items, the payments, as well as any of the other artifacts that are relevant for that communication.
Thank you. So yeah, I know, Patrick, you mentioned the really large organization you worked with in the case study, but a listener is asking, is the PRGX solution suitable for SMEs, small, medium enterprises who may have relatively low volume of invoices, but may be facing the same challenges?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is yes. Honestly and candidly, as we've relaunched in April, we're meeting with a wide spectrum of businesses and finding that there's a lot of commonalities in the challenges that they have. The way that we've implemented the platform is not necessarily purpose-built for large or medium or small organizations, but it's really about kind of getting those 5 key strategies in place. And so, there are actually some businesses that we speak to that don't really struggle at all with disputes, as an example, right? Just by the nature of their business, there's not a lot of disputed payments. However, they're like really overwhelmed with invoice inquiries, and the solution is certainly well suited to be able to manage and provide solutions to those issues.
Thank you. Another question's come in about your triage, and about how does the triage using AI work? Do you set those up according to each company's issues or situation? Does it study the main root causes for inquiries? Could you give us a bit more insight on that function, please?
Yeah, and so there's a couple things that come to mind here. In terms of some of the basics of triage, AI and machine learning aside, our platform enables different types of role types within the solution, and so you can actually assign different roles to different people within your organization, and then ensure that the right inquiries or the right communications from suppliers flow to the right people. And I think those are kind of table stakes for a workflow like this. And then on top of that, honestly, I think we're just at the beginning of what's possible from an AI standpoint. What's in the platform today is being able to see any of the disputes that comes through and actually predicting the probability of repayment on those disputes. And then you can actually, you could go and just based on your tasks, you could then say, hey, I want to look at the disputes of the highest dollar volume with the highest repay probability, right? And you can kind of self triage with that intelligence in that way. And then from a communication standpoint, I mentioned this before, but the AI is something that really learns over time, and that's true of the repayment probability as well, right? Out of the box, it'll be available, and it'll be available on any data that we have to train on it. But it only gets better over time, right? As users interact, as there's more, responses and back and forth and repayments and so on and so forth. The AI and the machine learning actually learns over time and only improves throughout the process.
Thank you. And you're doing great with these questions, Patrick. I've got a few more to throw at you.
Absolutely.
Great. Another question has come in, and so a listener is saying that their biggest stumbling block is that they have suppliers across 40 legal entities and 3 ERPs, and in some instances their own master data. So what's your experience in dealing with companies that may be having working across multiple legal entities and multiple ERPs, and the integration maybe that you could support?
Yeah, and so this actually goes back to a comment that I was making earlier. So PRGX as a business, I mean, we've been around for over 50 years, and we grew up as a profit recovery business, right? And over time, that's required us to become, the leaders in data management across source to pay. Our 300 plus clients across 30 countries. Often these are honestly the world's largest organizations, and so I wouldn't even say it's just common. It's almost like expected that there's going to be multiple ERP systems, there's going to be multiple regions. And so one of the things that we do with any of our solutions and services that we offer is the expectation that we're going to be helping actually consolidate and integrating across different ERP systems. And so not only is that something that we can handle, it's something that we more often than not have to accommodate as we implement with different clients and partners that we work with.
Thank you. And is it just ERPs that connects to, or are there any other systems like e-invoicing systems that the PRGX connects to?
Yeah, out of the box, it is our ERP systems that house the majority of this information that again kind of becomes the single pane of glass and the single source of truth that the users both within businesses and suppliers work with. That being said, we've had conversations with businesses who have e-invoicing systems where they want to include visibility into invoices that are kind of not yet in the ERP, they haven't yet been approved. And so those are things that we can accommodate for in the implementation. And kind of some of those end up being a little bit more of custom configurations, to integrate with some of those e-invoicing platforms as well.
That's great, thank you. I think you've done very well getting through this list of questions. So if you have any more, please do before we get to the hour. Otherwise, we're nearing the end of Q&A. And just wanted to ask about the other languages that this supports. Could you give us a bit of sense of what kind of languages and regions the PRGX Supplier Connect solution supports?
Yeah. So as we mentioned, of course, we're a global company. The platform today is multilingual. The way that we've kind of implemented that is at the platform level, and so you can update the application to different languages. There's English, Spanish, Portuguese, and a couple of those that are out of the box. But that is very easy for us to accommodate as we bring on any businesses outside of those kind of speaking languages. So that's by no means a blocker. And then we also have currency conversion. So there's a drop down at the top of the application where you can select if you want to see thing in British pounds or euros or USD or whatever it might be. Yeah, there's the currency conversion as well as languages that we can accommodate.
Well, thank you very much. I always learn so much when I speak to you, and I just want to say it's been great getting your passion about solving these problems. It's really evident from you and everyone at the PRGX team that we've worked with. So if you've enjoyed the webinar today, I give a big thank you to Patrick and his team at PRGX. So they're great people to reach out to if this is something that you're struggling with. So just before we say goodbye, just want to say we hope to see you on some other webinars we have coming up. So always have a look at our site as well. And yeah, again, the guys and the team at PRGX has been really supportive. And so if you've resonated with you today, reach out and just thank you to all the listeners. You've asked some fantastic questions and really participate in the polls. I know we can't see you, but we do feel your virtual presence. So thank you, Patrick. Thank you to everyone on the line today and your team. And we look forward to welcoming you next time. So thank you all and goodbye.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone who dialed in. Appreciate you.
Bye.